Hello once again, my gamers. Welcome back to round 2 of the Noobs for the Noob God Tournament. Today we have Multibro leading the Tomb Kings, going against Isaac, playing the Lizardmen. The Tomb Kings are being led by Grand Hierophant Katep, and they're bringing 4 units of Tomb Guard with halberds, 4 units of Ushabti Great Bows, 2 Bone Giants, and 2 Casket of Souls. The Lizardmen are being led by Krokgar and a Skink Priest of Heavens. For their front line they have a whole bunch of infantry, 2 units of Saurus Spears with shields, 6 units of Saurus Warriors with shields, and 1 unit of Saurus Warriors without shields. They are bringing 3 Chameleon Skinks, 3 sets of Cold One Riders, 1 Feral Bastillodon, and 1 Feral Carnosaur. So the Lizardmen definitely have the numbers advantage today, but will it pan out? Let's have a look. So here we are. We can see from here that the Lizardmen have elected to start over to the right here, hoping to crest this hill, I would imagine, and maybe try and hold it with some of their skirmishers and their ridiculous numbers advantage. They also have a flank going on the left side here, which is their units of Cold Ones. I imagine they're going to push them through these trees and try to outflank the Tomb Kings. Now, the Tomb Kings do have the ranged advantage in this fight because they have all of those Ushabti Great Bows, the Bone Giants, and of course Casket of Souls, so they can rain a lot of fire down the Lizardmen, before they get into range of being able to fight. But we're just going to have to see if that'll be enough, because once they get in, once the Lizardmen get into close proximity, it's going to look like they're going to swarm the Tomb Kings fairly easily. But we'll just have to wait and see. So as you can see here, the Lizardmen are moving their way up, and the Casket of Souls are beginning to fight. Didn't mean to pause it just there. And as you can see, they're taking some heavy casualties, but they just have so many units to spare. I really am not sure that it's going to be enough. He's also moving his Great Bows and a couple of halberds up just to try and, set up a bit of a forward defense against this. Unfortunately, he is leaving himself exposed to these Cold Ones, which are now cresting over the hill, charging towards his Great Bow, and that's going to be quite messy if he allows them to get any closer. But the problem is, he just doesn't really have the numbers to be able to defend this. If he pulled one of these halberds from the front lines, he'd be leaving, the infantry to just walk straight through. If he leaves them there, then his Ushabti Great Bows and everything else is just going to get charged by his Cold One. So really cannot win here, just needs to hope that he can do enough damage before the battle is up. Now we have the Bone Giants actually focusing on Krokgar and the Feral Carnosaur over here, which is a great idea. Those massive projectiles do so much damage, so it's good to have it on a single entity. Unfortunately, he is missing a couple of shots there, so he's not getting too much value, but hopefully he'll land a couple more shots. Otherwise, this is looking like it's going to be a fairly one-sided one for me. Now, the Ushabti Great Bows, it looks like they're on skirmish mode, which is not the best idea there. I personally would have used 1 unit of Great Bows just to clump these guys up and then had the other ones fire upon them to try and clear them out as quickly as possible. Putting them on skirmish mode basically means as soon as these guys get into, intimidation range where they could attack, then the Great Bows are just going to start running and they're not going to be able to fire. And units just keep getting into their range and then just keep running away. Now the Bone Giant here is getting absolutely slaughtered by all of these Cold One Knights. They are just swarming around him and doing so much damage. A large target such as this being surrounded by that many high damage targets, that many high damage units, he's going to go down extremely quickly. Now we barely have any units whatsoever firing from the Tomb King lines. We have a couple of Casket of Souls still firing and actually broken 2 units of infantry. We've got the Saurus Warriors there and some Saurus Warrior shields, and we are moving a Tomb Guard halberds backwards to try and help with all this large damage. Now they've got rid of 1 clump. It would have been excellent to get some shots into this clump here. So many kills to be picked up there, but unfortunately Grand Hierophant Katep and both of his Casket of Souls are now being taken out and pinned down, so they're not going to be firing for much longer. We can see these Cold One Riders decide to give up on the Bone Giant for now and are going to be charging into the backs of those Tomb Guard halberds, and once they make contact, even though they have barely any charge bonus, it's not going to feel too good, and being surrounded is going to quickly break those halberdiers. We can see that the 2 units of Great Bows have started firing again, but they are firing into this clump, which is a lot of friendly units, so they're having trouble picking off any fantastic shots. A decent spell there from Grand Hierophant Katep into those Chameleons, taking each of the units down to about half health, which is very effective there. Excellent news. They are a little bit clumped up, so I'd have personally spread these out a little bit more, and maybe, spread the poison around, get some on the front lines, get some in the back lines, get some on these guys, just spread it out as much as possible, because with poison units, it's not really so much about the damage you're doing, it's about setting your army up to do the majority of the damage for you by debuffing the troops with your poison. You can see that the Feral Carnosaur is getting into that Bone Giant. It's doing a tremendous amount of damage as the Feral Carnosaur does. It's got that Bones versus Large as well, so the Bone Giant is going to start struggling here very, very quickly indeed. You can also see that Krokgar is getting in to Grand Hierophant Katep and do I really need to tell you how one-sided that battle is going to be? Hierophant Ktep on the Casket of Souls is an amazing lord, but he's not a fighting lord. He needs to sit at the back and be protected, and he just isn't being, so he's going to fall very, very quickly there. And we can see he's losing, he's debilitated, he's got weak binding. It's not looking good. The two Greybows are trying to focus down this Feral Council over here, but it just has such a large health pool, and it's a single entity, so it's fairly... Yeah, I mean, I know it's a large entity, but it is still fairly hard to hit because it's not a big clump of units like this, so they are not really going to get that much value. He's now redirecting his attentions to these cold ones here, and again, that skirmish mode really becoming a detriment to these great bows. He just needs to commit one of those to fighting and use the other one to fire, and he might be able to root this unit and get some more value out of them. But as it is now, they're just going to run until they find the edge of the map, and they're not going to have any more effect to this battle from the looks of things. Now, we can see that the two Casket of Souls are still just about managing to stick around. Hierophant Ktep, he got a little bit of a respite from Krotgar, but that is because he's crumbling, and chances are he's not really going to get that leadership back because of how much he's being annihilated and how surrounded he is by all the other enemy units. Now we see that the Feral Bastildon is in the middle of these halberdiers with the Bone Giant and a unit of Saurus Warriors with shields, and he's just cleaning up. He might not be getting a lot of numbers of kills, but he's doing so much damage to that Bone Giant and the halberdiers that the Saurus Warriors are going to have no trouble whatsoever cleaning them up. Can see that the majority of the front lines for the Tomb Kings are now starting to fall, and you know, 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units here against a bunch of units of Lizardmen. They were just completely outnumbered. Even if they had the anti-infantry bonus of regular Tomb Guard, I really don't think they would have had any chance just because of the numbers advantage right there. We can see that one of the Ushabtis actually did commit to fighting the Cold Ones, and the other ones started firing on them, and they have actually managed to root that unit. That is very, very good. They just need to get these units firing into the rest of the units, and they might be able to, you know, at least do some damage before they go out, because as it looks here, the Lizardmen are absolutely dominating. The Tomb Kings really don't have that much left. Everything is pretty much crumbling that's over here. The Bone Giant is disintegrating, and Army Losses is just about coming into effect. So these Ushabti Greybows are going to start disintegrating any moment now, and there it is. And the Lizardmen take the victory. I mean, I don't want to ever call a battle before it's been done, but we could just see here that the Tomb King just didn't have the numbers to defend all those military units. All those ranged units. The ranged units, yes, they are an excellent choice, and if you can defend them, get a little choke point, maybe a little corner somewhere, and I'm not saying you should corner camp, you shouldn't do that, that's very naughty. But, you know, just finding somewhere where they can defend their own units, they might have had half a chance there, but as it stood, they just didn't have the units to protect them, and they got overrun, and before you know it, the Lizardmen just annihilate everything, stopped everything from firing, and if ranged units aren't firing, they're getting next to no value whatsoever. That being said, the Casket of Souls, they got 200 kills between them with another 59, if I could read, that'd be really wonderful. Another 59 on Grand Hierophant Ktep, so certainly not zero value there, but for just how many Lizardmen units there were, it just wasn't enough. You needed each of those units to be putting up, you know, 200 kills to make this a little bit more even. The Ushabti Greybows, each of them got a decent number of kills, you know, between 29 and 50, that's certainly not nothing. The Bone Giants, not too many kills themselves, but they were aiming at large targets, as I said. So, you know, they did a lot of damage, even if they didn't get many kills. And as for the front line, you know, a few kills here and there, but they were just going against far too many enemy infantry to even make a difference. So, unfortunately, they did not get too much value there. As for the Lizardmen, as you can see, not many units actually got that many kills. Like, the most kills that we have in a single unit is, I think it's this one here, the Saurus Shields, that got 66 kills. But that is purely because, A, they weren't really going against that many numbers. You know, there were 533 troops in total on the Tomb Kings, and you know that most of them are going to go down to disintegration once their leadership runs out. So there's not really that many opportunities to get kills, and also there are just that many units that the killing is just spread evenly between all of them. You know, we've got 23, 39, 17, 26, 22, 40. So many of these infantry got a bunch of kills, and it was just all spread between them. As you can see, the Cold Ones actually didn't get too many kills themselves, but as we could see, they were going after large targets, so, you know, there's not really that many units that they can kill, but they are still doing a lot of damage and getting a lot of value there. Exactly the same thing with the Feral Bastildon and the Feral Council, and also Krotgar. As for the Lizard's Spellcaster, I couldn't really see that many spells coming in. I might have to go and have a rewatch before I make my judgments. But yes, I didn't really see that many spells being cast from there, so we didn't really get too much value, but nevertheless, the Lizardmen take it. But see who is really moving on. let's get into the scores. Now, for the Tomb Kings being led by Multibro, for their army composition, we decided to give them an 11.5 out of 20. Now, it's very clear that they were playing around the ranged focus, and it was a little bit too much. They would have benefited from more units of cheaper infantry, so all sides can be defended, or maybe just, trim some of those ranged units down and just replace them with some front line, just so they have something to defend all those units with, because it just left them completely open to that flank, and they couldn't really do anything to defend it. Now, we did like Katep on the Roomba because it is so much fun, but again, it just needs more defense. If you want your entire army to be focused on ranged, you need to protect your flanks so hard to keep them firing, because ranged units that don't get any fire but get next to no value whatsoever. It would have also been quite nice to have seen some melee constructs rather than, just a bunch of bone giants, new shabties, just something to go into those front lines and do a bunch of damage. Because if you get a single entity that is clumping down, 3 to 4 units of lizardmen infantry, you can fire on that block and you are going to be hitting that unit way less than you would be if you were shooting into the backs of your own front lines. So I think it would have been a great idea to see some melee constructs just to bunch up all the lizard boys. Now, as for his tactics, unfortunately we had to go for a 6.5 out of 20. Now, we all found it was very static and defensive, and while being very defensive has its place, the dwarves are a very defensive faction and it works excellently for them, you just need to defend yourself more when you are being defensive. There was some great range plays there. There was a great arty shot that, broke a bunch of the enemy front line units, but they just needed to be targeted. Like, once a clump of enemy units has run away, you need to retarget them and focus on another clump. You just need to be on it, constantly retargeting them, optimizing your shots so that you are breaking as many units as possible. Again, so much value. The skirmish mode on the Great Bows also really shafted them. They just ran away from those cold ones right at the start and basically gave them a doorway to walk into the middle of the Tomb King army and, stop everything from firing and get so much damage on it. It was very sad to see indeed. For this defensive playstyle, with all that ranged, he really needed to defend himself a little bit better, but with the units he did have, I think he did an admirable job of holding off the one front, even if he didn't have enough units to hold off them all. Now for the magic, we really liked that vortex on the chameleons. It was excellently placed, it just went into all 3 of the units and got a bunch of damage and value right there. There are also some good debuffs on key units like Krotgar and some dinos and a couple of buffs on his front lines, but with the magic abilities of the caskets, where I'm pretty sure it just gives you a bunch of regen, we would have liked to have seen a lot more spells and just, keep spamming them out there every single time on cooldown if you have the magic reserves. Just keep pumping them out, keep buffing, keep debuffing, keep doing damage, would have been much better. So that's why we gave him a 9.5 out of 20 for magic. That brings his total to 27.5 out of 20. Now, as for the Lizardmen being led by Isaac, for army composition we gave him an 11 out of 20. He was clearly going for quantity over quality for the most part. It was a fairly standard Saurus spam, there was just so many Saurus right there. He could have won the battle with just those Saurus if he just spread them out and just surrounded the entire of the Tomb King army. It would have been nice to see a few more range units, maybe some Salamanders or something like that, but to be honest, if you don't have those DLCs, that's completely understandable, so we can't fault you too difficultly for that. The Bastildon is not a very common pick, but there is a bit of a reason for it. The other variants, like the Revivification Crystal, is just clearly superior. Even the Ark of Sotek one is just a lot better than your standard Bastildon. It would have probably been a good idea to pick something other than that, because it is quite an expensive unit for how little value you really tend to get out of it. But nevertheless, it's unusual, so we appreciate that. Now, as for tactics, we gave him a huge 15.5 out of 20. That flank was incredible. The battle was pretty much won from there onwards, since he just got into the middle of the entire Tomb King army and was doing so much damage, stopping units from firing. It was excellent. The frontline fight was okay, but with the numbers advantage being so large, it would have been nice to see them surrounding the Tomb King position a little bit more. At one point, there were like 3 units of Saurus fighting 1 unit of Tomb Guards, so, it would have been nice just to send 1 or maybe 2 units in, and then send the other ones around to get into the back lines, because if you are pinning down the enemy infantry, then they can't really stop you from doing that, so it would have been just a very easy way to just get around and surround the Tomb Kings and shut them down even faster. The chameleons did manage to get around and fire into the backs of the enemy units. Unfortunately, they were all in that massive clump you could see there. There were a few Casket of Soul shots that landed on them, as well as that Vortex spell, so they ended up taking a lot more damage than they would have needed to if they had spread out a little bit more and, maybe spread their fire out. And as I mentioned during the battle, you do need to spread the poison around. Yes, it's nice to focus fire on the high-value targets, on the large targets that need to be worn down very quickly, but with poison damage, as I said, it's less about the damage you are doing and more about the debuff, so if you can spread that debuff around a little bit more, then you get a lot more value out of it. But nevertheless, excellently done there. Now for magic, we gave them a 9.5 out of 20. It was mostly buffs and debuffs, and they were used fairly well. At key points in the battle, he was buffing the units that needed the buffs and debuffing the enemy units to give him the greatest possible advantage that he could. It would have been nice to see a few more offensive spells, like a Comet or a Thunderbolt, but Against a army that is so focused on being large and full of single entities, we can see why you didn't want to do that. So again, we can't fault you too much. And that brings the Lizardmen total to 36 out of 60, and with the bonus points of 15 for winning, that definitely cements the Lizardmen as moving on to the semi-finals. Since I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Noobs for the Noob God Tournament. I am working on stuff, I promise you. The Chaos Guide, it's coming soon. There was a tweet from the Total War Twitter that said the nuts and bolts patch, which is going to fix all the issues from the You're on the Paunch, or at least most of them, is going to be updated soon, and then it's going to be implemented as a full patch into the base game. So when that happens, I'm going to start working on the Chaos Guide, since I only really, I play in the actual build rather than any betas, just to make sure I'm getting, the most complete experience, and that, the guides are for everyone, and they're not just, the people that are playing on the beta. So yes, just thank you for your patience. I will also probably be streaming the campaign over on DLive, so if you would like to check that out, then head on over to the link in the description, or just head over to dlive.tv/ColonelDamneders and drop me a follow there, or, just head into the Discord. I let them know when I'm streaming, and you can hop in and just see me get absolutely destroyed by the Warriors of Chaos campaign. Can't wait for that. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then be sure to leave us a like and a comment saying, oh wow, this was a very enjoyable battle. I really appreciated your lovely commentary of just saying exactly the things that are happening on screen and adding next to no value whatsoever. I'd appreciate that very much. Yes, I would. If you didn't enjoy this video, then you definitely know what to do right there. You don't need any help doing that. And if you want to see more videos like this, more Total War guides, more things about other strategy games possibly, hopefully if Warhammer 3 ever comes out, we'll have some videos on that. Then be sure to hit that subscribe button and maybe that bell notification. I've heard that's a pretty cool thing to do nowadays, and it just helps you keep up to date on what the channel is doing, and just make sure every single video that I put out goes straight to you and you don't have to search for it. But for now, I've been Colonel Damneders, and I'll see you next turn.